So on the blog, I'm always doing a lot of talking about, the great writer Bill Burroughs, who I see as standing. Hold on a second, I gotta fix the camera. Who I see as being, very much apart from the rest of the beats. I mean, he was connected to the beats, but I see him as having been kind of disconnected from the beats as well. And one of my favorite passages from him, actually, it comes from a very influential book for me personally, The Adding Machine, because this was the first time I ever really saw someone I saw as a total artist, a creative artist, writing nonfiction. But it's kind of fictional, so it was just a very different reading experience for me, and it was very deeply influential. And I'm not afraid to say that it absolutely inspired how I started to go about certain aspects of my own writing. And in the past year, and I found this book probably about 2 years ago, The Adding Machine, I've written loads of non-fictional material that sometimes I feel kind of uneasy about, because we're living in a very fictional sort of stylized literary world these days for what literature still sells. But from what I always thought myself, at least. But it was just very big for me. It was a very big deal, and I thought it would be. I was just sitting here reading this passage, and I thought I'd read one of my favorite. I turned to it randomly because it's that sort of book, which I love. That you can just turn to any page almost, and I thought I would read. This is only about 3 pages, so I thought I would read this to whoever's interested, and it's about this idea that William had about something called the Johnson family. So I thought I would read it. It's pretty short, so I won't mind. So, let's begin. I first heard this expression about the Johnson family in a book called You Can't Win by Jack Black, the life story of a burglar. The book was published in 1927, and I read it as a boy, fascinated by this dark, furtive, purposeful world. Recently, I managed to get a copy, and I reread the book with poignant nostalgia. Between the reader in 1927 and the reader in 1980 falls the shadow of August 6th, 1945, one of the most portentous dates of history. Train whistles across the distant sky. This is a peep show back to the world of rod-riding yeggs and peat men and cat burglars. Bindle stiffs, gay cats in hobo jungles, and Salt Chunk Mary, the fence in her 2-story red brick house down by the tracks somewhere in Idaho. She keeps a blue porcelain coffee pot and an iron pot of pork and beans, always in the fire. Eat first, talk business later. The watches and rings slopped out on the kitchen table by the chipped coffee mugs. She named a price, and she didn't name another. In this world of shabby rooming houses, furtive gray figures in dark suits, hop joints, and chili parlors, the Johnson family took shape as a code of conduct. This is the part that I find the most interesting. To say someone is a Johnson, you see, means he keeps his word and honors his obligations. He's a good man to do business with and a good man to have in your team. He's not a malicious, snooping, interfering, self-righteous, troublemaking motherfucker. No, he says person. But you get to know a Johnson when you see one, and you get to know those of another persuasion. I remember in the Merchant Marine Training Center at Sheepshead Bay when the war ended. Most of the trainees quit right then, and there was a long line to turn in equipment which had to be checked out item by item. Some of us had only been there a few days. We had no equipment to turn in. So we hoped to avoid standing for hours, days perhaps, in line for no purpose. I remember this spade cat said, "Well, we're going to meet a nice guy or we're going to meet a prick." We met a prick, but we managed to find a Johnson. Yes, you get to know a Johnson when you see one. The cop who gave me a joint to smoke in the paddy wagon, Johnson. The hotel clerk who tipped me off I was hot, Johnson. And sometimes you don't see the Johnson. And I remember a friend of mine asked someone to send him a cake of hash from France. Well, the asshole put it into a cheap envelope with no wrapping, and it cut through the envelope. But some Johnson had put it back in and sealed the envelope with tape. An anonymous Johnson. Years ago, I was stranded in the wilds of East Texas, and Bill Gaines was sending me a little Pantapon, what is that, through the mail, and he invented this clever, it's a drug of some sort, this clever code, and telegrams were flying back and forth. Urgently need pants. Panic among dealers. No pants available, sir. No pants available. Now, this was during the war in a town of 200 people. By rights, we should have had the FBI swarming all over us. Amazing how little has changed. I remember the telegraph operator, in his office in the railroad station. He had a kind, unhappy face. I suspect he was having trouble with his wife. Never a question or comment. He just didn't care what pants stood for. He was a Johnson. See, a Johnson minds his own business, but he'll help when help is needed. He doesn't stand by while someone's drowning or trapped in a wrecked car. Kells Elvins, a friend of mine, he was doing 90 in his town and County Chrysler on the way from far Texas to Laredo. He comes up over a rise and there's a fucking cow right in the middle of the road on the bridge. He slams on the brake, hits the cow doing 60. The car flips over and he's pinned under it with a broken collarbone, covered from head to foot with blood and guts and cow shit. So along comes a car with some salesmen in it. They get out cautiously. He tells them how to jack the car up, get it off of them, but when they see that blood, they don't want to know. They don't want to get mixed up with something like that. They get back in their car and they drive away. Then a truck driver comes along. He doesn't need to be told exactly what to do. He gets the car off Kells and takes him to a hospital. The truck driver was a Johnson. The salesmen, they were shits, like most salesmen. The Johnson family formulates... Oh, this is a hard word to pronounce. Some of them are kind of hard sometimes when you're reading them because I never pronounce them out loud. A Manichaean, how would you pronounce that out loud? Position where good and evil are in conflict, and the outcome is, at this point, uncertain. It's not an eternal conflict, since one or the other must win a final victory. The question is, which side are you on? I recollect Brian Geisen, Ian Somerville, and your reporter were drinking an espresso on the terrace of a little cafe on the Calle di Vigny in Tangier. After lunch, a dead empty space, you know. Then this Spaniard walks by. He's about 50 or older, shabby, obviously very poor, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. And our mouths fell open as we exclaimed in unison, "My God, that's a harmless-looking person!" He passed. I never saw him again. His passing portentous as a comet, reminding us how rare it is to see a harmless-looking person. A man who minds his own business and gets along as best he can in a world largely populated by people of a very different persuasion, kept alive by the hope of harming someone, or their way to the commissario to denounce a neighbor or a business rival, leaving squiggles and mutterings of malevolence, I got that one right, in their wake like ugly little spirits. He passed, and I never saw him again, but I recognized him. He was a fucking Johnson. February 3rd, 1982. A program on El Salvador. A reporter has contacted the guerrilla group. One look at those faces, I know where I stand. I know them all. They're Johnsons. The reporter is checking the contention of the junta and the Reagan administration that the guerrillas are armed with Soviet weapons via Cuba and Nicaragua. Let's see your guns. Young man has a Belgian assault rifle, 9mm, handsome boy. About 20, has an M16, little fat shit. About 16, got a 22 held together with wire and tape. 50 years old, he tells us, smiling. Man in his 30s with a nice smile. Me, I got no gun. Well, where are the Russian AK-47s you're supposed to be getting from Cuba? No hay, no hay. There aren't any. Look at these faces. Look at them. Nice faces. Johnson faces. You can't fake it. You can't fake this shit. That old Spaniard, he couldn't have been a KGB colonel or a cousin or M15. No agent could have that cover, because it isn't a cover. It's just the real thing. 3 guns for 20 men. Shy, handsome boy of 15 has been with the guerrilla since he was 14. Why? No ideology, no rubbish, no bullshit. Self-defense. Once you take up arms against a bunch of shits, there's no way back. Lay down your arms and they'll kill you. I've seen the Policía Nacional in action in Colombia during the Civil War. Vicious thugs. No Johnsons there. That's all the orientation I need to make up my mind about El Salvador. I don't want to bear Secretary Haig's lies or any other lies. Haig is no Johnson. He's got one of the most basically dishonest faces I've ever seen. and the same look on his face when he lies as General Westmoreland's. Lie, 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 written all over it. So, there you have it. That was The Adding Machine, and it was a essay about Johnsons from William S. Burroughs. And I was thinking maybe for the blog or whatever, I'll do some more reading. I'll probably read some of my own pieces, but I'll also read some other pieces that I particularly enjoy from other authors, because I just do think it's a pretty good idea. I don't want to spend too much time doing it because I prefer to write more, but it's pretty fun, and who the hell knows, it might make me some friends. So, hope you enjoyed. Ciao.